I never thought I'd see the day when my life's work would be reduced to a plastic turkey. 4 generations of Hartwell men had built our family's turkey farm into one of the most successful in New England. 75 years of early mornings, callous hands, and honest work, gone in 9 months. My grandson Tyler, the same boy I taught to drive a tractor when his legs could barely reach the pedals, sold my $4 million farm after I signed it over to him. Left it all behind without a second thought. All he gave me was this cheap plastic turkey as a memento. Said it would last longer than the real ones. I thought I knew him. I thought family meant something. But that day at Thanksgiving when I finally confronted him in front of everyone, well, that changed everything. And what I discovered afterward was even more shocking than his betrayal. I built Hartwell Heritage Farms from a struggling plot of land into something special. My father started with just 50 turkeys back in 1947, and by the time I took over in '79, we had about 500. Today, well, until recently, we raised over 20,000 free-range, organic turkeys a year on 175 acres in western Massachusetts. That farm was everything to me. My wife Martha passed away 12 years ago, cancer. After that, it was just me and the farm, plus my daughter Rebecca and her family. Rebecca never had much interest in farming. She moved to Boston, became a corporate attorney, married a finance guy named Greg. They gave me 2 grandkids, Tyler and his younger sister Abigail. Tyler was different from the rest of them. While Rebecca and Greg chased promotions and country club memberships, Tyler would spend summers with me on the farm. That boy could name every breed of turkey by age 7. He'd wake up at 5 a.m. without complaint to help with feeding. Grandpa Joe, he'd say, "I want to learn everything." I thought I'd found my successor. There was this time when Tyler was 14. Rebecca and Greg came for their annual Independence Day visit. They'd stay for exactly 3 days, like clockwork. Greg started mocking the primitive lifestyle of farming, called it a dying industry right to my face during the barbecue. Tyler stood up and said, "Dad, Grandpa's farm grosses more annually than your entire department." The look on Greg's face. Then Greg grounded Tyler for disrespect, made him stay inside while we set off fireworks. I still remember Tyler watching from the window, giving me a little salute when no one was looking. By the time Tyler graduated from Cornell with his agriculture business degree, I was 72 and struggling with arthritis. The farm was valued at just over $4 million, not just the land and animals, but the processing facility we'd built, the Hartwell Heritage brand we'd established with restaurants across New England. I was so proud watching Tyler walk across that graduation stage. That night, I told him I wanted to sign the farm over to him. "You've earned it," I said. "I'll stay on as an advisor as long as you need, but it's time for the next generation." We drank whiskey on the porch until sunrise, planning expansions, new breeding programs, farm-to-table initiatives. Tyler had tears in his eyes when he hugged me. "I won't let you down, Grandpa," he promised. The transfer was my grand gesture, my legacy secured. I even moved out of the main farmhouse into the smaller caretaker's cottage to give Tyler space to make the farm his own. What I didn't know then was that Tyler had been keeping a secret, one that would explain everything that happened next. Rebecca called it foolish. "Dad, you should have sold the farm and retired like normal people." Greg suggested I should have at least maintained control and interest. But I trusted Tyler completely. The papers were signed just after his 23rd birthday. Hartwell Heritage Farms belonged to Tyler Hartwell. 3 weeks later, I noticed men in suits walking the property, Tyler pointing at buildings, gesturing across the fields. When I asked him about it that evening, he said they were potential investors interested in expanding operations. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I started noticing changes around August. Tyler hired a management company to handle day-to-day operations. He was traveling more, Boston, New York, Chicago, meeting with distributors, he'd say. The farmhands who'd worked alongside me for decades were replaced with corporate types who couldn't tell a poult from a pullet. Our heritage breeding program was scaled back. The little farm store Martha and I had built, where locals came for 40 years to buy fresh turkeys, was closed for renovations that never seemed to happen. When I raised concerns, Tyler would pat my shoulder.
Business is evolving, Grandpa. Trust the process. I'd retreat to my cottage, feeling increasingly like a relic. The farm I knew was disappearing before my eyes, but I kept my mouth shut. What right did I have to question him? It was his farm now. By October, orders for Thanksgiving turkeys were pouring in as usual. Restaurants that had bought from us for generations were calling. But instead of our usual preparations, Tyler hired a PR firm to rebrand Hartwell Heritage. They wanted to change our logo, the silhouette of a turkey that Martha had drawn herself, to some modern geometric nonsense. One morning, I found our old processing equipment being loaded onto trucks. "Where's that going?" I asked one of Tyler's new managers. "Being consolidated with our other operations," he said, not meeting my eyes. "What other operations?" I asked. He mumbled something about strategic partnerships and walked away. That night, I confronted Tyler in his office, my old office, where pictures of my father and me had been replaced with abstract art. "What's really going on here, Tyler? Tell me straight." He sighed, swiveling in his chair like he was annoyed by a persistent customer. "We're modernizing, Grandpa. The future of agriculture is consolidation." "That's corporate talk," I said. "What does it mean for our turkeys for Thanksgiving?" "It's all under control," he assured me. "You should enjoy your retirement. Maybe take that trip to the Grand Canyon you always talked about." 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, trucks arrived. Not our usual delivery vehicles, but refrigerated semis from Patriot Poultry Products, Inc. They unloaded thousands of frozen turkeys. Standard commercial birds, not our heritage breeds, not raised on our land. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, confronting Tyler as the workers stacked boxes in our barn. "Meeting demand," Tyler said smoothly. "Our production capacity was limited. We've partnered with Patriot to fulfill all orders. These aren't our turkeys. These are mass-produced, factory-farmed birds." My voice was rising. Workers were staring. Tyler pulled me aside, his voice low. "Grandpa, please, this is a business decision. The margins on our heritage turkeys were too low. This is how modern agriculture works." That night, I couldn't sleep. I drove into town and used the library computer, never bothered with having one of my own. I searched for Patriot Poultry. They were owned by Mid-American Food Conglomerate, one of the largest industrial agriculture corporations in the country. I dug deeper and found a press release dated just 2 weeks after I'd signed the farm over to Tyler. Mid-American acquires historic Hartwell Heritage Farms. My hands shook as I printed the page. Tyler hadn't just changed our operations, he'd sold the entire farm. The land, the brand, everything. And he'd hidden it from me for months. Thanksgiving was approaching, normally our proudest time of year, when restaurants and families across New England served Hartwell turkeys. Tyler announced we'd host the family dinner at the farm one last time. Rebecca, Greg, Abigail, some of Tyler's friends from college, and a woman named Vanessa whom Tyler introduced as his business partner from Mid-American. I said nothing about what I'd discovered. I watched as Tyler played the gracious host, showing off his farm. I heard him tell his sister that he'd be moving to Chicago in January for a senior executive position. I saw him point out the development potential of the eastern fields to Greg. The farm, my family's legacy, wasn't just changing, it was being erased. Thanksgiving Day arrived crisp and clear, the kind of New England autumn day that makes you grateful just to be alive. The farmhouse dining room was set with the good china, my mother's, that Martha had always insisted we use for holidays. Tyler had hired caterers on a turkey farm at Thanksgiving? Everyone arrived around 2 o'clock. Rebecca and Greg pulled up in their new Mercedes. Abigail brought her boyfriend from law school. Tyler's college friends arrived with expensive wines. Vanessa from Mid-American wore a designer pantsuit that probably cost more than a month's feed for our birds. The table was laden with food, centered around an enormous roasted turkey on my grandmother's serving platter. Tyler carved with theatrical flourish, passing plates around the table. "Before we eat," Tyler announced, raising his glass, "I want to share some exciting news. As some of you know, I've accepted a position as Vice President of Agricultural Acquisitions at Mid-American Food Conglomerate." Smiles and congratulations around the table. "And," he continued, "I finalized the sale of the remaining Hartwell Heritage assets. The land will be developed into luxury farmhouse estates, 60 homes on 1-acre lots. Construction begins in February." Greg slapped Tyler on the back. "Smart move, son. That's how you turn a quaint family business into real money." Rebecca beamed. "We're so proud of you, honey." I stared at my plate. 60 homes. The land my father had worked until his hands bled. The fields where I'd taught Tyler to drive a tractor. All to be carved up like the turkey on the table. I took a bite of that turkey and knew immediately. "This isn't our bird," I said, my voice cutting through the chatter. The table fell silent. Tyler laughed nervously. "Of course it is, Grandpa. It's a Hartwell Heritage turkey." I set down my fork. "No, this is a Patriot poultry bird, processed, frozen, and shipped here like all the others. I raised turkeys for 50 years. You think I don't know the difference?" Tyler's smile tightened. "Grandpa, maybe this isn't the time." "When is the time, Tyler? After you've moved to Chicago? After you've bulldozed the brooder house my father built by hand? After the Hartwell name only exists as a plaque on one of your luxury farmhouse estates?" I pulled the folded printout from my pocket and tossed it onto the table. "You sold the farm 9 months ago. You've been lying to me, to everyone, pretending to run it while you dismantled everything we built." Vanessa cleared her throat. "Mr. Hartwell, the acquisition has been tremendously beneficial for all parties. Tyler's expertise." "Tyler's expertise?" I laughed bitterly. "Tyler's expertise is knowing exactly when to cash in on his inheritance, on generations of other people's work." "That's enough, Dad," Rebecca said sharply. "Tyler made a sound business decision. The farming industry is dying. It's dying because people like you think food comes from factories instead of farms." My voice had risen to a shout. I hadn't raised my voice in years, but I couldn't stop now. 4 generations of Hartwells raised turkeys on this land. We survived droughts, recessions, avian flu outbreaks. We built something that mattered. "Something that mattered?" Tyler finally snapped. "It mattered to you, Grandpa, to your generation. But times change. Do you know what running this farm the old way would mean? Working 18-hour days for razor-thin margins while corporations like Mid-American squeeze small producers out of existence. I found a better way." "A better way?" I stood up, my chair scraping back. "You didn't find a better way to run the farm. You found a way to profit from destroying it." I reached into my other pocket and pulled out a small object, placing it on the table with a hollow plastic thunk. A cheap plastic turkey figurine, mass-produced in some factory overseas. "Tyler brought me this last week," I said, my voice suddenly quiet. "Said I should keep it as a memento, since it lasts longer than the real thing." That's when I knew for sure. My grandson didn't just sell my farm. He never understood what it meant in the first place. The table was dead silent. Tyler's face had gone pale. "I'm sorry I failed you, Tyler. I thought I was teaching you about heritage and stewardship. Instead, I gave you something to cash in on." I walked to the door, turned back one last time. "Enjoy your frozen turkey and your blood money. I hope it was worth it." I walked out, the screen door slamming behind me, and headed to my cottage. Behind me, I could hear the chaos erupting. Accusations, defenses, arguments. I didn't care anymore. It was done. I spent that night alone in my cottage, staring at old photographs. Martha at our wedding. My father showing me how to hold a turkey poult. Tyler as a boy, proudly displaying his 4-H ribbon. I felt hollow, like everything meaningful had been stripped away. The next morning, a knock at my door. I expected Tyler with rehearsed apologies, or Rebecca with logical explanations about financial realities. Instead, it was Abigail, my quieter granddaughter, the one who'd always seemed more interested in her law books than the farm. "Can I come in, Grandpa?" she asked. Her eyes were red-rimmed. We sat at my small kitchen table. She held my weathered hands in her smooth ones. "I didn't know," she said, "about the sale, about any of it. I thought Tyler was running the farm." I nodded, too drained for anger. "There's something else you should know," she continued. "Tyler's been planning this since his sophomore year of college. He took agricultural business to position himself for Mid-American. He told me once that he saw the farm as his ticket into corporate agriculture. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. All those summers, those early mornings, those conversations about heritage breeds and sustainable farming, had they all been calculation on his part? "After you left yesterday, it got ugly," Abigail said. "Mom defended Tyler, said you were being selfish and stuck in the past. But Tyler's friends were uncomfortable. Vanessa left immediately. And then," she hesitated, "Tyler said something about how he'd played the devoted grandson long enough to get what he wanted." I closed my eyes, absorbing the blow. "That's when I left too," Abigail said. "I couldn't stand to hear him talk that way. But Grandpa, I've been thinking all night. I want to show you something." She opened her laptop, these kids and their technology, and pulled up documents. "I've been researching agricultural law for a class project. Tyler may have sold the farm, but there are complications he might not have considered." For the next hour, Abigail outlined what she'd discovered. The original deed to Hartwell Heritage contained easement clauses and agricultural preservation restrictions dating back to a 1986 state conservation program my father had enrolled in. The sale to Mid-American might have violated those terms. Furthermore, the water rights for the eastern portion of the property were tied to continuing agricultural use. "I don't want to give you false hope," Abigail cautioned, "but there may be grounds to challenge parts of the sale, particularly the residential development plans." Over the following weeks, Abigail introduced me to a professor from her law school who specialized in agricultural property rights. We filed challenges with the county zoning board and the state agricultural commission. Mid-American's lawyers pushed back hard, but our case gained attention. Local farmers rallied around us. The media picked up the story. Fourth-generation farmer fighting corporate takeover. Tyler avoided me entirely, having moved temporarily to Boston ahead of his Chicago relocation. Rebecca called once, tense and formal, suggesting I accept reality and move on gracefully. I told her I'd never been more graceful than in fighting for what matters. 3 months after Thanksgiving, Mid-American proposed a settlement. They would abandon the residential development plans and instead establish an agricultural education center on 20 acres of the original farmland. The Hartwell name would remain, honoring the family's heritage. And I would receive a modest but fair compensation package, including lifetime rights to my cottage. It wasn't a complete victory, but it preserved something of our legacy. The day after signing the settlement, I received an unexpected visitor, Vanessa from Mid-American. "Mr. Hartwell," she said awkwardly, standing on my porch, "I wanted you to know that Tyler has been reassigned within our organization. His position in Chicago is no longer available." I raised an eyebrow, waiting. The board was displeased with how the acquisition was handled. The negative publicity, the legal complications he failed to research, and frankly, sir, several of us were uncomfortable with how he spoke about you after you left that dinner. Corporate justice. Cold comfort, but comfort nonetheless. Spring came, and with it a new chapter. Abigail, inspired by our legal battle, decided to specialize in agricultural law. She started spending weekends at the cottage with me, learning things Tyler had never cared to know. The rhythms of the land, the history of our farming practices, the stories of people who'd worked alongside our family for generations. One April morning, she arrived with a surprise, a cardboard box that chirped and peeped. Inside were 12 heritage turkey poults, descendants of our original breeding stock. I tracked down a farmer in Vermont who bought some of our breeding pairs last year, she explained. He was happy to sell me these. I thought, maybe we could start something small? Not the whole farm, but enough to keep the true Hartwell heritage alive? We converted my garden shed into a small brooder house. Just 12 birds to start, a fraction of what we once had, but still a beginning. Abigail registered Hartwell Heritage Artisanal Turkeys as a small business. We wouldn't get rich, but that was never the point. Last I heard, Tyler was working in a mid-level position at a food distribution company in Minneapolis. Not the corporate fast track he'd envisioned. He sent a Christmas card last year, store-bought, with a generic message in his signature. No mention of the farm or what happened. No apology. The plastic turkey still sits on my windowsill.
Not as a reminder of betrayal anymore, but as a lesson about what's genuine and what's artificial. About the difference between seeing land as something to use versus something to steward. Sometimes the most valuable inheritance isn't what's in the bank or on paper. It's the knowledge of who you are and what you stand for. Tyler may have sold the farm, but he couldn't sell our heritage. That lives on in unexpected ways, through unexpected people. Like Abigail, who never showed interest in farming until she found her own connection to this land. Like the Agricultural Education Center that now teaches sustainable farming practices to school children on the same fields where I learned from my father. And like the small flock of heritage turkeys that still carry the genetics my family carefully developed over generations. I'm 75 now, and I've learned that legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's who carries your values forward. That plastic turkey on my windowsill reminds me daily that authentic things require care and commitment. They can't be mass-produced or bought off a shelf. This Thanksgiving, Abigail and I will process 6 heritage turkeys for special customers who appreciate knowing where their food comes from. It's a humble operation compared to what Hartwell Heritage once was, but it's honest. It's real. And seeing my granddaughter continue what my father started brings me a joy I never expected to feel again. Sometimes the people we count on most let us down, and sometimes strength comes from unexpected places. If you've ever felt betrayed by family or watched something you love get dismantled for profit, know that you're not alone. And know that fighting for what matters is never wasted effort, even if victory looks different than you imagined. If this story meant something to you, please subscribe to the channel for more real-life family stories. Share your own experiences in the comments below. Sometimes the most valuable thing we can give each other is the truth of our lives. Not a plastic imitation, but the real, messy, meaningful thing. Thank you for listening to my story.